thought what would be a more appropriate place to start off our visit to St. Augustine than the oldest wooden schoolhouse in the United States, which is here in St. Augustine, Florida. I am here with my wife, and she doesn't want me on camera, so I've got to try to do filming, you know, in different sections when we're not both there or in it. But what I found interesting was, while we were looking at this area here, I just wanted to point out some stuff that the historian told me. He said that this area, most of the buildings here are actually original. Some are new, but a lot of them are original, but they've been, you know, refurnished and everything, refinished, well, fixed. But he had some cool things to talk about with these walls. He says most of these walls here that you see like these are actually, this stuff I think is called coquina or something like that. It's like small shells. It's a Spanish word for that, and that's what they use for their cement. But this other stuff is made out of oysters and stuff, shells. And they shaved them down so it's smooth, so when people walk by they don't get hurt. But originally they were all left sticking out really sharp like barbed wires. So if somebody tried to come to the city and get through the walls, they would get all cut up. It was like super strong barbed wire. And the whole city was surrounded by this, or, you know, parts of it had been built off and surrounded, like the fort, which my wife and I already went to look at and I didn't film. But maybe I'll go back by there real quick to film for you guys. But he was telling me something interesting. You see these buildings here? He says this stuff was made underneath. It's also that coquina stuff, but they put cement on top of it. But what he said was interesting was this whole area got decimated when Hurricane Matthew came through. I don't know if you've been following the news or paying attention to this stuff, but the Flagler beach area, which is where we are, you know, with St. Augustine, had really bad flooding. And he said the water level was actually higher than what you see here on that blue line. It was like up this high here. And he said this whole area, a whole bunch of the buildings got damaged because of that. That's how high the water was up. To give you a size estimate, that's about 2.5 to 3 feet high. The streets, he said, of this whole area were all 2.5 to 3 feet underwater. So now I don't feel so bad about my yurt going underwater by 4 to 6 inches. We're going to be walking down, and I'll be showing you some of the streets and sights that we can see from here, and then I'll make sure that we go by the fort one more time just to show you what it looks like. The stores around St. Augustine, when you walk down in downtown St. Augustine, old St. Augustine, are tourist type shops selling souvenirs and all sorts of stuff. But here I am at the Fine Art, Old City Fine Arts and More oil painting and frame store, and you can see these are, I think, original paintings. Charging $91, $92 for the painting and $70 for the frame. To give you a quick price reference here, this one's $205 for the painting and $150 for the frame. You can get original oil paintings from an area such as this. They also, of course, have all the trinkets and stuff that you see, you know, at most tourist type destinations. Just wanted to show you what it typically looks like walking down the main street here from the fort. Basically, once you enter the fort, you kind of walk down the strip. And there are restaurants and, of course, all these clothing stores and other tourist type attractions. Now, my wife and I aren't really into touristy stuff. I mean, as far as clothes and things like that. We're just kind of looking and absorbing everything and taking it in. I'd take a moment just to show you what the guy was talking about. You can see how the wood here has the water line where the water actually came up. It, like, totally decimated old St. Augustine. And that was from Hurricane Matthew. Some of the wind chimes available here and run roughly $22 to $30. I think they're hand blown or handmade glass wind chimes. You can clearly see the water line damage here. And yeah, it's definitely up about 2.5 feet up off the ground. See how that cracking there? That's from the water running through, and it cracked all the way up here. But the whole area has been decimated from Hurricane Matthew. I don't know how many months ago that was. Probably about 9 or 10 months, maybe. Like most typical Florida towns and tourist areas, you can always get sea stuff. Of course, they got alligator head here, which aren't really from the sea, but Got all these shells. There's a starfish for $3. Different types of starfish, $3 or $4. And different types of shells. Little monkey ornaments here for $6. So the alligator heads are $25 each. Walking around and notice these vines here. I don't know if you can see these vines that are growing up these trees. But these are the same kind of vines that I'm trying to grow at the yurt. So if they ever actually grow, this is how big they will get. They will become like big vines, just like this on this tree here. And that's what the yurt will be covered in if it ever fully grows like I hope it will. Just thought I'd take a moment to film the Dr. Peck house. It says the stone walls of this building date from before 1750 and were part of the house owned by the royal treasurer late in the first Spanish period. During the British period, it served for a time as the home of Governor John Moultrie. In 1837, Dr. Seth S. Peck purchased the house and rebuilt it using the old walls and adding the frame second story. It remained in the Peck family until willed to the city in 1931. A generous grant from the Flagler Foundation permitted extensive restoration in 1968. Big house. More of these shops. Lots of clothing stores, food stores of all sorts, candy stores, all sorts of stores around here. Touch. This is Father Pedro Camps. Statue of the father right here. You can see the statue is here. This church. In the memory of Father Pedro Camps, the spiritual leader of the Menorcan colony. The statue presented to Most Reverend Paul F. Tanner, Bishop of the St. Augustine, by Fernando A. Rubio of Moroca and Xavier L. Telesher of St. Augustine, April 24th, 1975. In commemoration of the 200th anniversary of the arrival of the Menorcan colonists in St. Augustine. Currently like in the center area of St. Augustine, and you can see that there's like all sorts of monuments and stuff out here, including the little well. But here is the St. Augustine Foot Soldiers Monument. That's what it looks like. And it says it's dedicated to those who participated in the civil rights movement in the 1960s in St. Augustine. They protested racial discrimination by marching, picketing, kneeling in at churches, sitting at lunch counters, waiting in the beaches, attending rallies, raising money, and preparing meals and providing safe haven. They persisted in the face of jailings, beatings, shootings, loss of employment, threats, and other dangers. They were foot soldiers for freedom and justice, whose efforts and examples helped to pass the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964. Their courage and heroism changed America and inspired the world. What I find really interesting about a lot of the monuments here that are scattered throughout St. Augustine and around this area here, especially in the center area, I guess it's the square that we're at right here. I'm going to take a real quick look around to show you guys what we're seeing. I'm telling myself not to go too fast because I know you guys get a little dizzy. But this area here, you can see our St. Augustine Foot Soldiers Monument here. Tourist bus cart thingy going through, trolley. Anyhow, what I find ironic or funny is that this stuff's written in Braille. So blind people, it says touch St. Augustine. This is stop number 7. It's audio. Wonder if you, it says audio. I guess you have to scan it or something. I don't know, or call. You call that number and they'll tell you about this place. So, but it's meant for people to touch, and it has the monument here. So they've got all these designations for blind people to see. which I think is kind of funny. Not that it's funny to be blind, but the funny that they have these plaques here that you can read through Braille, and you can call the phone number and they'll give you an audio of the tourist location and the tourist attraction that's here. Apparently there's a statue of Jesus here with some children, and it says, Abba, Father, I choose this day to be your hopeful child. In Jesus' precious name I pray, Amen. To the glory of God and in memory of Dory Frances Duke Keller, 1946 to 2009. So this is a relatively new statue here of Jesus and the children. War in St. Augustine during the American Revolution. From the onset of the American Revolution in 1775, the British Crown Colony in East Florida was a loyalist bastion. In its capital, St. Augustine, the British lodged as prisoners many American patriots and their French allies. Most of these prisoners were given liberty of the town, but some were held in Castillo de San Marcos. A few captives rented quarters, but most of the men were housed in the unfinished State House, which stood near the spot. By the end of 1780, these prisoners included 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence: Thomas Hayward Jr., Arthur Middleton, and Edward Rutledge. On July 4th, 1781, the Patriot captives celebrated Independence Day. Some of you might like to see the architecture in this area. You can see the buildings here with the they built, like, I guess, a castle design. This is like Flagler's stuff. I don't know. I don't think Flagler designed this. I think they just kind of designed it in the style of the Flagler castle or building up here ahead, which is Flagler College, I think. But you can see all the balconies and all the fancy work and tile work and whatnot. House. Changing of the guard. Casa Gubernamental Cabello de la Guardia. Until 1763, the governor's house was Spanish Florida's capital. In Spain, when Spain ceded Florida to Great Britain, the British governors of East Florida made governor's house their official residence. I'm not going to read all that. I'm just too lazy. You can pause this film and read it if you want to know more. But this is the governor's house right here. And there's also a really nice fountain here in the backyard. Isn't that beautiful? Go ahead and take a moment here to show you Flagler College out here by St. Augustine, or in St. Augustine. You can see how fancy and nice this college is. I think it's still functioning. It's a real college. Isn't that fancy? Across the street from Flagler College is the Leitner Museum, which is over there. And that's a historical landmark for this area.